We began on Monday night, and I don't mean to sound or be repetitious, but we began on Monday night through the teachings that we received from Moses, that by trusting in God, we can have strength in the midst of our stress. Moses blessed us to see that even when there are mountains on either side, even when Pharaoh's army is pressing from behind, even when you're facing the Red Sea, God can give us strength in the midst of stressful situations. Not only did we discover that we can have strength, but also on last night through Paul's letter to the Philippian church, even though Paul was writing from behind the Roman jail, even though he had problems of his own, yet and still Paul blessed us to discover that we can have peace in the times of pressure. In other words, my brothers and my sisters, when we learn how to rejoice in the Lord, when we learn how to treat one another right, when we learn how to lean and to depend on Him, God can bless us to go home at night, lay our head on our pillow, and sleep peacefully regardless of what the devil is trying to do. Can I get a witness? But in preparation for tonight's message, my mind went back to a song that we used to sing in the church of old, a song that you would hear them say, and they would begin by telling us that there's something down inside of me telling me to go ahead. They would sing that stanza, and then they'd follow up and say, there's love down inside of me telling me to go ahead. And if that wasn't good enough, they would close out by saying that Jesus is down inside of me telling me to go ahead. And I began to think about that song, and as I thought about it, the more I thought about it, the more I could not help but to reflect upon some of the stories that my parents and grandparents told me that they had to go through in order to make ends meet. And in thinking of those stories, one cannot help but to wonder, what was it that they had, who was it that they had that blessed them to continue to praise the Lord Sunday after Sunday. If you never talked to your grandparents or those who had to go through what people have labeled as the good old days, you again can't help but to think about the fact that they did not have the resources that we have today. Yet and still Sunday morning they were in church ready to give God the praise. When you think about the lifestyle that they lived, they did not have the modern technologies that we live in today. They had to walk to the stream to get water for the house. They had to go outside and collect wood in order to put in the stove to start cooking for the family. They had to plow a mule for 8 hours of the day, and they worked for very little resources. And yet and still, Sunday morning, they gave God the praise. You have to recognize that they had limited knowledge. They did not have the education, or either they did not have the opportunity to get the education that we are able to have today. They weren't welcome in the school systems like we are today. As a matter of fact, some lost their life so that we can be able to have the freedom that we have. Yet and still on Sunday morning, they were in church praising the Lord. They did not even have the freedom that we have today. Granddaddy said in Chunky, a black man had to be out of Chunky before 5 o'clock p.m. because he didn't have any business being seen in the street at night. Yet and still Sunday morning, they were in God's house giving Him the praise. What was it about the Lord? What was it about the Spirit of God? What was it down on the inside that made them go ahead? And yet and still, is anything changed about God that should should keep us from giving him the praise right now.